On October 4th of 2016, Ops water raid was executed by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, to the Sabah Regional Water Department in Kota Kinabalu. Awang Muhammad Tahir bin Muhammad Talib, the Regional Water Department Director, and Teo Chikong, the Regional Water Department Deputy Director, were sacked on accounts of corruptions involving bribery, money laundering, and power abuse.
Awang Tahir Awang Talib, who was arrested for an alleged corruption case,
will go on trial after their case management on May 4th.
The two officials were arrested on Tuesday.
During the raid, over 50 million ringgit in hard cold cash was seized. 23 million ringgit was found inside of Tahir's office, 3 million ringgit was found in Teo's office, 8 million was found in Tahir's home, 9 million was found inside Tahir's Mazda car. Another 4 million was found inside Tahir's Mercedes-Benz car, and another over 4 million ringgit was seized from Teo. 127 land titles that was valued at 30 million ringgit, together with gold, jewelry, luxury watches, 94 designer handbags, and 9 expensive cars was also confiscated from the two main suspects. Later during the investigation, another 30 million in foreign bank account would also be discovered, with the money trail leading to Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand. Tahir's wife, Fazia Put, was also arrested. 2 million ringgit was found in several bank accounts under her name. Lim Lombeng, the former Regional Water Department Deputy Director, would also be arrested. 2.4 million ringgit and a luxury vehicle was seized from him. Another 1 million ringgit was surrendered to the MACC by 3 different suspects that has testified against the case. 19 district engineers would also be arrested, and a net amount of 2.4 million ringgit was confiscated from them. Over 120 million ringgit in bank accounts, jewelry, assets, trust funds, as well as in hard cold cash, was confiscated by the MACC. The lead rating officer said that it was extraordinary. Money was piled everywhere. Some of the money was even rotting away. He even has to call for a backup team several times to process and haul the seizures found in Tahir's and Teo's office and home. The MACC Deputy Chief Operations Commissioner, Azam Baki, was quoted saying, "In the 49 years since the commission was established, we have never seen this amount of bribe money. This is the largest confiscation by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission in history." To understand this case, we must first understand the clean water supply infrastructure in Sabah. As you probably know, a water supply infrastructure works as follows. First, water is collected from a river or a reservoir. Then, the water will be treated through a water treatment plant, and then distributed to consumer via a water distribution pipeline. Currently, the Regional Water Department has 7 water dams, 1,150 water tanks, and 89 water treatment plants. These infrastructures currently produce water at 1,420 million liter per day, MLD, and they are operating at full capacity. This amount cannot accommodate the daily water demand, as Sabah's current water demand is 1,600 MLD. The gap is 11%. A big section of the clean water supply pipeline is also multiple decades old. With poor maintenance, replacement, and upgrading works to this obsolete pipeline, a massive amount of clean water supply has been leaking throughout the decades. This loss of water is called non-revenue water, NRW. Other than pipe leaks, there are also several factors that contribute to NRW. NRW can be divided into 2 main categories. First, loss of water in the physical sense. Second, commercial loss, although defective water meters could belong in both categories. The inaccurate reading from a defective meter will cause inaccurate evaluation for both NRW categories. The main cause that contributes to NRW is oftentimes the physical loss category. This formula calculates the difference between how much is supplied and how much is received at the consumer's end. The difference between these 2 variables dictates the NRW value. The supply volume is taken at the point of water treatment plant, and the received volume is taken from the consumer's water meter. This is water supply, this is water received, and this is the NRW. Sabah NRW as of December of 2023 is 55%. Ranked second worst in the year 2023 in Malaysia. Through the years, barely making any significant improvements. As of November of 2024, Sabah's NRW is up to 60%. This means only 40% of the water supply reached the consumer. %10 of the NRW is contributed by water theft, suspected done by factories and plantation by a large margin, and in comparison, on a smaller scale, water theft by illegal squatters. Majority of Sabah's NRW is most certainly from leakage along the water supply pipeline and inaccurate reading from the old, defective water meters. Emphasis on the decades-old water supply pipeline. Some of the water treatment plants are also in poor condition, poorly managed and operating with outdated design, resulting in frequent water shortages and supply of poor water quality to consumers. Residents in some areas claims that they have been facing with clean water supply problem for over 20 years. This was reported in May 2023. The residents claimed that from 2022 the problem has worsened. They have been having severe clean water supply problem for almost every day throughout that period. This lady in her 50s have been having body ache and back pain due to frequently transporting water in a bucket to her house. They also had to buy bottled mineral water to get clean water supply for drinking. This had cost them considerable amount of money through the years. Another lady complained that she is worried about the raising price of bottled mineral water and how long would they live in this state. There are also children that go to school in the morning without showering. With the scarce water supply, they could only brush their teeth. And I could imagine the same for every family member. Another lady complained the same. Body ache and back pain from transporting water to their house. A public servant that have lived in the area for more than 40 years had told her that water supply disruption could happen at any time. So they had to be prepared at all times. They have been living in the state of paranoia in regards to the water supply. This problem made even worse during the festive seasons. Another resident claims that his doctor told him that his high blood pressure maybe was caused by the salty water supplied by the Sandakan Water Department that he had been drinking for years. He now relies on medicine daily. The worsening of Sandakan water supply problem started around the final quarter of 2022 due to broken pipes and broken river gate at the water intake plant. Allegedly, some fishermen broke the river gate at the water intake plant. Cables was stolen. This has allowed seawater to flow upstream to the water intake plant, making the water supply saltier. This is the water intake plant in question, the Garanono Water Intake Plant. Water is pumped from this station to this dam before treated in the water treatment plant. This infrastructure is responsible to supply clean treated water to 80% of Sandakan's population. And as such, it is the most critical clean water supply infrastructure in Sandakan. Categorically, there are several types of water. In this instance, we need to talk about three of them. First, seawater. As its name implies, the salty water from the sea. Secondly, brackish water. Brackish water is fresh water that had mixed with seawater. They are found in estuaries where fresh water from a river meet and mix with seawater. This water is salty but not as salty as seawater, but also cannot be categorized as fresh water. Last but not least, the good old fresh water. They naturally come from rain and springs that flows further to be a river or a freshwater lake. Garanono water intake in particular sits just about at the border of the estuary. It is still in the brackish water territory. Other than acting as an off-river storage, the Betotan Dam is also used by the Sandakan Water Department to dilute the saltiness and the turbidity of the brackish water from the Sigaliad River before further treating it in the water treatment plant. Salty water and many sediments and particles that cause the water to be turbid are heavier than fresh water. So, naturally in progression, they will sink below the fresh water, but only to a certain extent. A collection of freshwater springs that feeds into the dam as well as rainwater also helps to dilute the salty brackish water, but also only up to a certain extent. Having said that, the Betotan Dam is categorically not a freshwater dam. It is a brackish water dam. The water quality level in this type of water dam is especially never consistent. It fluctuates depending on a long list of factors. Some of the factors are climate, human activity, the frequency of water recharge, water level, and water supply quality. If you want to understand further, you can find the link for studies that had been conducted for this type of water reservoir in the video description. At a certain time, the water quality in the Betotan Dam is bound to drop below the benchmark allowed. This will prompt the Sandakan Water Department to cut off the water supply to its consumers. And quite a number of consumers, may I say. 80% of Sandakan's population. That is over 300,000 people in 2023. There are 2 gate systems in this water intake plant. The first gate section is at the river barrage. It is used to regulate water accumulation in the intake point and to prevent the salter seawater to flow into the water intake, especially during high tide. And the second gate section is at the sluice canal or river lock. This canal is the main way of letting fishermen from upstream pass through the intake plant. This gate system also allows the water level at the water intake to be maintained and prevents the salter seawater to flow upstream into the water intake chamber. Shahelmi implied that both of these gates were broken at that time, and this was totally devastating. The salter water was able to flow upstream and into the intake chamber, and this had directly increased the salinity of the Betotan Dam. These gates were broken in December 2022, and spare parts for these gates were not in the inventory, and it had to be ordered from India. The spare parts only arrived in March, and the repair works was completed on May 5th. It took half a year for the problem to be solved. For how critical this water supply infrastructure is to Sandakan, this was unacceptable. In November 2023, Shahelmi said that the salty water in Sandakan is now under control. As per August of 2024, problems still persisted. The government, and especially the Sandakan Water Department, need to be extra vigilant and swift in dealing with the fluctuating water quality of the Betotan water reservoir. This is indeed a cat and mouse game, and it is a long one, and indeed, water supply issue is not special to Sandakan. These are some of the headlines highlighting water supply issues that had occurred across the region. Although I must say that this is not the whole picture. And I could not find any recent headline regarding water supply problem in this district. When I look up to the Water Department website, Talupid had at least 18 water supply disruptions throughout 2024, caused by power outages, upgrading works, repair works, and high turbidity of the water source. To paint the full picture, I need to get at least 3 years of data on what are the cause, how long the disruption lasted, what is the local water supply and demand, and not just for one district, but for the whole region, and at least for the whole of Malaysia for comparison. But for the constraints that I have for this video, this is all I can do.
36 water projects in rural parts of Sabah and Sarawak have been delayed for up to 7 years.
Isu air di Sabah ini bukan lagi tahap tiada air, it's krisis sudah. Krisis.
Boleh lihat di sini ada baldi-baldi semua. Sebenarnya kami sudah utarakan ini isu beberapa kali. Sampai bila ini catuan?
Over 1,000 villages in Kampung Bambangan, Sandakan are still living off of muddy rainwater accumulated from the forest. About 20 years ago, the village had taken their own initiative to find the closest water source to the village.
Jalan sudah masuk, lampu sudah masuk, kenapa air tidak masuk? Jangan kita pandai saja berjanji, tapi tidak. Kalau kita berjanji tidak itu maka bambung. Kita tidak mau pemimpin bambung.
1 minggu kadang-kadang 1 kali ada air, kadang-kadang langsung tidak ada air. Yang kita tunggu ini air hujan lah.
Sebelah karena perlu tutup dulu, baru sebelah rumah dapat air.
Isu yang pertama ialah isu air masin. Ini menyebabkan masalah kesehatan di mana ramai yang mengalami jerit-jerit. Perkara kedua, kerap berlaku mati air. Bayangkan, baru-baru ini air mati, kemudian jenazah tidak dapat dimandikan pasal tidak ada air. Bayangkan isu air yang tidak cekap ditangani oleh kerajaan negeri melalui Jabatan Air dan Menteri Kerja Raya Negeri Sabah ini, sampai orang meninggal pun susah.
Kepada mana-mana pihak yang bertanggung jawab, sudilah kiranya menolong kampung kami ini yang sudah lebih 20 tahun mengalami krisis air, jalan dan juga masalah elektrik.
Joined by NGOs, the students highlighted the severe water problems affecting various parts of Sabah, not just the UMS campus.
Sabah ni adalah sebuah negeri yang amat besar, luas dan berbukit-bukit. Dia tidak mempunyai isu dari segi penerimaan hujan, bekalan air dan sebagainya. Isunya adalah dari segi pemprosesan loji-loji itu sendiri dan kemudian untuk sistem pengagihan menyebabkan kekurangan air ataupun ketiadaan air di tengah-tengah kawasan. Dan mungkin juga even di bandar-bandar utama seperti Bandar Kuala Kinabalu, Tawau, Sandakan dan sebagainya. Punca utama dia adalah bukannya ketiadaan air tapi lebih kepada sistem pengurusan bekalan air itu sendiri.
To approach this issue objectively, we should also discuss what had been done by the Water Department and the government to remedy this issue. These are most of the major or impactful projects that had been carried out by them in the 2020s. Projects of upgrading and new construction of water treatment plants, dam construction and water supply connection to villages. Some have been completed, some still in progress, and some are still in planning or being studied. Although many of these projects was plagued by delays, this was one of the big one, involving a construction of a transmission pipeline from Telabong Tuaran to Kota Kinabalu area. The timely completion of this pipeline was very critical, as to accommodate the growing water demand in Kota Kinabalu, especially in the northern part of the area. This project was started in 2018 and was scheduled to be completed in 2022. But as of mid-2023, the pipe-laying works was still yet to start. As of now, the pipe-laying works is already in progress and is expected to be completed in July this year. This work was severely delayed due to unconfirmed pipe-laying route, due to poor coordination, land acquisition issues, and also maybe in a major way, due to the construction of Pan-Borneo Highway at the same location, which is also delayed by the same issues. And the pipeline works was also delayed by the lockdown during the pandemic. After taking over in late 2020, the current government had stated their intent to lay out and execute a 15 years plan to resolve the water issues in Sabah, as well as to increase the treated water supply coverage to rural areas to 90%. As of data in 2023, the water supply infrastructures only covers 69% of rural areas, while covering 100% of urban areas. How successful is this aspiration, however, will depends on many aspects and will remain to be seen in 2035. The Water Department is also exercising efforts to balance the water pressure in their pipeline. This are done by strategic installation of pressure sensors and pressure regulating valve, or PRV. Areas with higher water pressure are bound to receive more water compared to areas that has lower water pressure. So, as they claimed, they are exercising pressure balancing to ensure water for all. Although, if this work is not done correctly, it will cause water supply disruption to other places. Like what happened in early January this year in this area, when the Water Department carried out a pressure balancing works in Sabah's southwest coast area. In general, water pressure monitoring is quite critical, especially to old pipeline like what we have in Sabah. Too much pressure could in time further degrade their decades-old pipeline, and this could lead to more water leaks, especially when combined with other external factors. And water pressure sensors is also used to combat the NRW, as its strategic installation could aid to approximate pipe leaks location. How effective the Water Department is in carrying out this task is again will remain to be seen. As observed in this chart's trend line year after year, the NRW is ever increasing. While the gap between water supply and demand could be resolved by increasing the water supply capacity, without effective effort in addressing the NRW, the water supply system will not be functioning efficiently. This will cause heavy loss in revenue to the government in perpetuity, among other issues. Looking at this chart, one could argue if there was any effort done at all to fix the NRW. A much more rigorous effort must be put in place to combat the increasing NRW. Producing an excess water supply could impact the environment and energy use efficiency. For example, not even building an excess dam. Building any dam will have an impact to the environment and disrupt the local community's livelihood. Building an unnecessary water treatment plant will cause an excess use of energy to run the water treatment plant. Not to mention the wasteful spending in the construction, operation, and maintenance of this excess water treatment plant, specifically on the issue of pipe leakages. In the long run, it could also directly cause, or at the very least, contribute to the cause of disasters, such as land settlements, landslides, and sinkholes that could endanger the public at large, for their lives, their safety, and financially. This task is surely monumental, but it is their job, and the job has been long overdue. Whoever in the government must conduct a much more proactive, effective, and transparent effort to tackle this issue. Although the efforts that had been, and are currently being carried out by the government and the Water Department must be appreciated and supported by the people, two things remains very clear. First, the lines of administrations that had governed Sabah through the decades has failed to provide to its people a dependable water supply infrastructure that it needed. And last but not least, the water issue that had been plaguing Sabah for so long had morphed into a crisis. And to enable an effective way forward, this must be acknowledged by the government. Billions had been funneled by the central government throughout the decades, while millions from this allocation had been squandered by these criminals. Corruption has curbed the progress of clean water supply infrastructure development in Sabah for many, many years. The corruption in the water department had been going on, at least since the 80s. In part 2 of this episode, I will break down the court hearing for the water department scandal. The story is nothing short of a Hollywood crime drama.